Hello everybody, Ed0626 here on the channel, back again. Hope you're all having a fantastic day whenever time of the day that you're watching this video. So before I get started, I know a lot of you are going to start crucifying me in the comments section. Why is he using NBA 2K gameplay in the background when he's talking about football or soccer in the US as we call it? Why is he playing basketball in the background? That's because I don't own any other fucking sports games. I have like 2 NBA games that I rarely ever play. I have 1 MLB game that me and my brother play on occasion. And then, as you know, the rest of my gaming catalog is consisting of WWE games. So that's really all I have in my arsenal. So I figured basketball is kind of close enough to being fun to watch on YouTube where I'm just like, yeah, I can throw this in the background of a video and see what happens. FIFA, it's not really on my radar, and that's just the God's honest truth. I don't hate FIFA, I never really played it, but I know people that have played it, and they will certainly talk your ear off about the issues that game has because it's run by EA. But that's a different story for a different time. Today's video is going to be all about my first year watching the Premier League. And I'm actually very excited about this because I've been saying for the last 5 or so years, let's say 5, how I want to get into the Premier League. At the time, I didn't really know if they actually had a broadcast that reached the US. Now they have NBC, which is like they have games that they play on the USA channel. Then they have Peacock as an alternative, and that's all well and good. And then CBS or Paramount or whatever the fuck I think it is, Paramount Plus, they run the Champions League games, but I don't have Paramount, so I can't watch anything in regards to the Champions League. So mostly I just kind of focused on Premier League over time. But over the course of these last several years, I had no idea where to actually watch Premier League games. I just thought it was something specifically for that region of the world. Now that there's all these alternatives, I decided after the World Cup, because I was so moved by the World Cup finals. It's one of the greatest games of soccer or football I've ever watched in my life. And that's the God's honest truth. Like, I've seen great matches, but I think that is, without a doubt, one of the best games of soccer you can ever watch, in my honest opinion. So I was so moved by that game that I finally decided to pull the trigger. And I think by this time, the Premier League was already kind of getting started. It felt like it was definitely a couple of weeks in. And so that's when I decided to start choosing my team, and that was Liverpool FC. You're probably wondering why of all the teams of the Premier League I chose Liverpool. Well, Hitman26, Johnny, Shipman, as we ever so affectionately call him sometimes, he is a big Liverpool fan, and Johnny and I have been friends for a very long time, and I decided, fuck it, I'll just bandwagon on his end and see what happens. It turns out being a Liverpool fan is a lot more frustrating than I thought it would, especially in the early outset of the season, because we would win some games, then we'd have a bunch of ties or a loss. Now, keep in mind, in the early outset of me watching these matches, I have no fucking idea what's happening. Okay? It feels like there's a universal rule or universal rules when it comes to watching soccer. All these universal rules that apparently every time I watch soccer, I didn't know that it carried over. Like, I didn't know that the World Cup rules, the FIFA rules were essentially the same as Premier League and all other leagues in adjacent to that. So I'm sitting here like, what? There's ties? Like, there's no winner? Coming from the US, it's like, it's unfathomable. Like, I know there could be ties in the World Cup, but usually that's because there's a round-robin point system. And I can understand that. But in an actual league, I didn't think that was possible. Like, you guys actually allow ties and you can go home satisfied that your team tied because they didn't lose to this particular team or this and that and the other. So I'm sitting here like, that's the first culture shock that I have. Okay? And then it's the fucking argument of offside. Now in hockey, and now I'm going to make a lot of parallels to hockey as I'm talking about this, by the way, because I see a lot of similarities in my time watching hockey this year and my time watching the Premier League. We'll get to that in a second. In hockey, I know how an offside works. But in soccer, I don't know if it's similar or what, but every time the fucking guy, when there's a goal, raises the flag for an offside and VAR has to check it, and I'm like, okay, what happened? Why is it an offside? I'm still trying to figure that out, and it took me forever to figure out how an offside works in hockey, so this is going to be a very big problem for me. I I don't know why it took me so long to figure out in hockey, but that's besides the point. So that's like the next thing I have trying to learn. Then there's formations. Then there's all these players I have to learn. And, I knew a few of them because watching the World Cup, I knew Virgil van Dijk. I knew even the previous World Cup in Russia. Like, I knew Mo Salah. Like, everybody was fucking talking about how great Mo Salah is. And I'm like, really? Mo Salah is great? Like, Egypt is fucking terrible. Is he like the only good player on this team? Yeah, so that's kind of how I felt in Russia's World Cup with Mo Salah. And now I'm watching Mo Salah on the Premier League playing for Liverpool, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the greatest guy ever. Like, holy shit, this guy could score goals, and he's fantastic. And Nunez is doing his thing, and we got Gakpo over the course of the season. So it's like Gakpo's doing a really good, solid job, and he's a young guy. He's going to be here a couple of years. Bobby Firmino, who's apparently was his last year here at Liverpool, and they gave him a great send-off. He was scoring some goals off the bench that were really spectacular. Diogo Jota was fucking doing his thing when he got back from injury. So it's like we had a bunch of great strikers, but our midfield, the fucking midfield of Liverpool is astronomically terrible. Like, there are so many old midfielders that we have that I just was like, why the fuck are you playing right now? Like, at some point, I respect when professionals, as they age, they want to keep playing because they think in their head that they're still at this certain level, but their body just can't do it. And I watch all these young guys pass by our older midfielders, and that's where a lot of our defensive issues start to come into play, because Konate is fucking having, he fucking shits the bed sometimes. Van Dijk had more than several occasions over the course of the last several weeks of the season where he's having his own issues with defense. It was terrible, man. But I will say this much, and I don't know if he classifies as a midfielder or not, but Trent Alexander-Arnold, even the last couple of weeks, has been a joy to watch. Like, my buddy Mike, Panama Red from Bromigos podcast, he was telling me, like, oh, you have Alexander-Arnold, he's okay. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I have no expectations for this guy. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, Arnold's having these spectacular passes and these setups, and his corners are fantastic at times. And it's like, holy shit, dude. This guy's actually good. Like, he's actually really solid based on my point of view of the whole thing. Because keep in mind, I'm a new viewer to this, so I don't really know what makes a good midfielder or a good fullback or things of that nature. I think that's what he's called. I'm looking him up right now on Wikipedia, and he's considered one of the best fullbacks in the world. So I guess that's his position. Does that count as midfield? I don't know. Again, I don't know the fucking formations in the team. I just know there's a midfield, strikers, and defense. That's all I know. I'll learn as things go on. But still, there was a whole bunch of fucking issues, though, that we had, man. There was a string in the middle of the season where I didn't know what the fuck we were going to do, man. I was convinced that the team that I chose to support was fucking terrible. Like, we lost a whole bunch of easy games that we shouldn't have lost. And I'm sitting here like, God damn, this is terrible. Like, what the fuck is Jurgen Klopp doing? That's our manager in Liverpool. Like, come on, this guy is supposed to be a really good manager. He fucking coached us to a championship a few years ago before I started watching, or before I started really paying attention. And I'm like, what is the problem? Like, what is going on? We had injuries, yeah, but still, it just feels like Klopp can't adjust his game sometimes. And that's what a lot of the talk online was about. Now, here's where I make the comparison to hockey. If you look at the New York Rangers' performance in the latter half of the regular season, going into the playoffs against the Devils in the first round, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of parallels between the Rangers in that time frame, even throughout the season, if you can make that argument, and Liverpool. We have a bunch of young players trying to break out, and granted, I think both respective teams, young players stepped up to the best of their ability. I'm not denying that. But I feel like hockey, when I was watching it and I was watching how the fan base reacted to, say, Gerard Gallant, who was our now former head coach, and how he was very stubborn. He didn't really adjust his game plan, and it was painfully evident in the fucking Devils series that we had. That was miserable to watch. Our stars weren't showing up, at least for a majority of the series. The trades that we had made did not plan out the way that they would. I told you fuckers Patrick Kane wasn't going to work out. And I see this chatter online, and I look back to weeks ago in the season, in the mid part of the season, when we're facing guys like Wolves, we're losing to Real Madrid in awful fashion, we're losing to a bunch of other weaker teams in the Premier League that we shouldn't be losing to, and how people are basically calling for Jurgen Klopp's head because he can't adjust the game plan. And I was talking to my buddy Johnny about this. He's like, nah, Klopp's not going to leave. I'm like, are you sure about that? People don't seem to like him very much right now. He's like, no, Klopp's not going to get fired, and anybody that says that's a fucking moron. Which I'm inclined to agree a little bit. I don't hate Klopp. I don't know much about his coaching style, having just started watching the Premier League. So it's like, okay, I'll learn and see what happens next year. But that's just kind of where I see my similarities with watching hockey and watching soccer. There are times where both teams were losing to very weak opponents, and there are times that we were generating no fucking offense at all, and our defense kept crumbling every time the opponent would enter their offensive side of the field, or in this case, rink as well, if we're talking hockey. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that those are a lot of the similarities that I saw. But man, there wasn't all negatives when I came to watching the Premier League. I mean, look at the Man United game. Now, if Mike ever sees this video, he's not going to be very happy with me because Mike's a big Manchester United fan. And I got to be honest with you, that was probably one of the greatest games of soccer I've ever seen in my life, was Liverpool absolutely beating the ever-living shit out of Man United on a Sunday morning, and that was the best 2 hours I've ever spent. Like, period, bar none. I was so happy about that. And then we had a bit of a lull after that match. Ties, losses, things of that nature. Then we came to this ridiculous winning streak that we were having. Some games we were probably even lucky to win. We had like, what, a 7-game win streak in the latter half of this season? And unfortunately, it was cut short because we fucking tied to Aston Villa, which, quite frankly, there's no shame in doing that because Aston Villa is on par with us. If it was any team lower than us as far as the rankings go, I'd be a little bit more upset. And it was the last game at home in Anfield, which was really unfortunate that we had to tie there, but it is what it is. Now I can only hope that we beat Southampton this Sunday, and that will be the end of the season for us, because it looks like we're not going to make the top 4, which means we're not going to move on to the FA Cup, and that's kind of a shame, because I think if Manchester United wins, that's going to be a very tough situation for us. And again, we needed to beat Aston Villa, and we just couldn't do that. And now we more or less have to rely on, hopefully, I don't know if Man United has any games left in the season, but we have to rely on beating Southampton. And if Man United plays another match, hopefully they lose, which is pretty doubtful. So either way, man, I have to say, as I've mentioned earlier in the video, I really have enjoyed this season of the Premier League, having just gotten into it. I still have to learn a lot more about soccer. And football, excuse me. I still have to learn a lot more about football, but I have to say, when it comes to watching, say, American football and watching European football, I just think soccer is a lot more enjoyable to watch. I have to be honest with you. Soccer is just a more enjoyable sport to watch because there's not constant commercial interruptions every fucking 5 minutes. It has its fair share of issues when it comes to saying referees, but it's a pretty solid watch. It's a really easy thing to get into. My parents kept telling me, like, when did you decide to get into soccer all of a sudden? And I'm just like, because I wanted to, because to me, it's a more enjoyable sport to watch than, say, fucking basketball, where in the last minute and a half is bombarded by constant timeouts because coaches are trying to figure out strategies and shit like that. Like, 30 seconds of a game can last for 20 minutes. That's fucking ridiculous to me. I'm sorry. It just is. And it's annoying to watch. Same thing with football with the fucking commercial interruptions. Hockey doesn't really have that issue because hockey more or less goes for like 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And there's really not much of an interruption. And baseball is baseball. You know when the commercials are going to be, in between innings and in between half innings. So you're not really going to get interrupted there for the most part. But I got to say, I'm really glad that I have another sport to watch now because, again, it was something I genuinely enjoyed. So I appreciate all the Brits allowing me to enjoy their sport. I look forward to next year, win or lose on Sunday when it comes to Liverpool. And all I can say is, up the Reds. You'll never walk alone. Thank you for watching this video. Follow me on all the social media stuff you see down in the description. Take care of yourselves, and more importantly, take care of each other. Peace out.